Gotta pick up the kids, gotta get some groceries. So I'm heading down to my local Walmart. And then suddenly, that dude just cut me off. So you go, ee, ee, ee. Whew. But here's the problem. The car just doesn't brake the way it used to for some reason. And this is going to happen over time on your 2006 Honda Civic. What's up everyone, and welcome to another episode of Kelvin's Garage. Now it's a beautiful day today in San Francisco, and that's pretty rare. And so today I have a very important episode for you. We are going to adjust the drum brakes on my 2006 Honda Civic. Now before we get started, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to you guys, the audience. I couldn't have made this channel without you guys. We just hit over 100 subscribers. All right, and I know that sounds like just a tiny blip in the YouTube ecosphere, but for me it's a big deal. It's the first step in growing this channel, and so I really want to thank you for watching, and hopefully I can continue making more of these videos and help everyone fix their car. And for those of you who are curious, today is Labor Day, September 6, 2021, and check out that odometer. We've got 230,608 miles on the 2006 Honda Civic. Isn't that incredible? And we're gonna keep going as long as we can. Now the other way you can tell that the rear drum brakes need adjustment is by checking the handbrake. Now you may have remembered not too long ago that when you park and you activate the handbrake, you'd immediately feel a lot of resistance, which means that the e-brake is engaging basically. Now, I just want to clarify this for everyone who doesn't know, because when I was young, I actually didn't understand this. I actually thought the handbrake, the e-brake, was some kind of a magical lever that controlled some kind of magical, ultra powerful braking system in the car that would just stop the car when you pulled on it. But actually, it's not. The handbrake is simply engaging the two rear wheel brakes, okay? And in this car, they're drum brakes, okay? And drum brakes need adjusting. So we can see here that when I pull on the e-brake, there's not much resistance there, okay? So in other words, the car is not really engaging those two rear drum brakes, all right? And that's an issue, okay? You can see right away when you pull on this, it's loose. All right, and you may find that when you park on a hill, when you go about in San Francisco or somewhere else in a park or on the mountain, that your car will start sliding a little bit, even with the e-brake engaged. Okay, even when it's not engaged fully, and you may find that you need to really pull hard on this, like all the way up here, when it starts clicking all the way up here, before the e-brake even does anything. All right, and that is an issue. Okay, that means that the rear brakes are just not engaging. There's some kind of wear and tear happening in the car, and you need a lot of force to get it up way up here so that the rear brakes start engaging and you actually have a brake that is preventing your car from rolling down. All right, so you're gonna see right away after we adjust the rear drum brakes that this is going to change dramatically, all right? Now, in order to do the adjustment on the rear drum brakes, you don't need many tools, all right? So all you really need is the lug nut wrench, all right? The one that comes in your car with the spare tire, okay? A screwdriver, okay, flathead screwdriver, okay? And I've got also a marker, all right? And I'll show you what that is for later. And potentially brake parts cleaner, okay? If you want to clean the rear drum brakes while it's open and exposed. Okay, this only costs $3.37 at my favorite auto parts store, Walmart, okay? And what I also have here is a mask, all right? And so, we've seen plenty of these lately, and why not just use it, okay? And the reason why I use this is because, when you open up the brake system or work on brakes, there is a potential for the dust to kick up, all right? And this is especially true for drum brakes, all right? So I recommend getting a mask and using it at least for the beginning part of the job where you open up the drum brake, and I'll show you that in a second. But supposedly these days there's no cancer-causing agents in the brake pad material, but you never know, right? So there could still be some kind of you know, chemicals or minerals in the brake pads. You don't want to inhale that, basically. So try to use a mask, and I'll show you exactly when we need to do that. Okay, so before we do anything else when working on the rear drum brakes, we do need to remember to release the handbrake, okay? Put it in the fully off position. And that's because we don't want it engaged when we're trying to pull the drum off, okay? Basically, we can't work on it if the brake is engaged, right? So please put the lever down before working on the drum brakes, all right? Make sure the car is in park and we're ready to go. Now I have to admit that I actually didn't know this for a really long time, okay? And that's because most of the cars that I've driven in the past were disc brakes, all right? And disc brakes do not need adjusting. Over time, they're self-adjusting. And what happens is that as the pad wears out, fluid will go into the system and compensate for any kind of gaps in the distance between the pad and the disc itself, all right? So this is the front of the 2006 Honda Civic, and it's got disc brakes in the front. It's a very common configuration to have disc brakes in the front because they're more powerful, and to have drum brakes in the rear, all right? So you don't have to adjust the front disc brakes other than keep your brake fluid topped off to where it's supposed to be, okay? And then this will adjust itself, basically. But we do need to adjust the rear drum brakes. Okay, so we're going to do each side one at a time, all right? You don't have to jack up the entire rear of the vehicle all at once. You can do it one at a time, all right? But the first things first, we need to jack up the car. Okay, so we're just gonna jack up the car like we've done in the past, all right? Just the jack mounting point right here in the back, right where the metal reinforcement is, all right? And now when we jack up the rear, what we need to do is jack it up to a point where the rear tire still grips the floor, okay? Because we want to loosen these lug nuts, and that's how I do it. Some people just start loosening the lug nuts before jacking it up, and that's okay, but I think it puts a little stress right here on the lug nut portion. So I like to take the weight off by jacking it up about halfway, leaving the tire against the floor so it's got some traction, and then I can turn the lug nuts. Okay, so we're about halfway with the load of the vehicle raised up to a certain point, and we still have tread connected to the floor, so it should be easy to loosen these lug nuts. We're going to finish jacking the car up, and we should be able to easily take the lug nuts off and pull the rear wheel off. Okay, so now we raise the car all the way so that the tire clears the floor. Okay, and you can see because the rear brakes, the handbrake is disengaged, the wheel spins freely. See? See that? All right. So that's why we needed the friction on the tire to loosen the lug nuts. You could have also pulled the handbrake, you know, if you're not getting enough anti-force for when you take the lug nuts off. You could pull the handbrake again, then disengage it again when we work on the brakes. But either way works. And the wheel comes off and we set it aside. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got here, okay? This is the rear drum brakes, okay? And you can see it's a drum, okay? It's not a disc, all right? It's a drum, all right? And within here houses the braking system, okay? And the braking system uses shoes, okay? Not brake pads. And basically how it works is the same way a shoe would work, right? In real life. You know, you step on something for friction, right? You step your foot down for friction. The same thing happens here, okay? This drum is essentially the floor on the interior side, and when you step on the brakes, all right, there's a thing called a wheel cylinder. It's going to put force on the brake shoes, okay? And those brake shoes are going to step against the inside of this drum, all right? And that is what's going to give us the braking force. Now, before we get started, right, I want to show you guys that this is the drum, and it is kind of like a sealed system, okay? Notice that it's sealed, all right, which means all the braking stuff is happening on the inside. It is not exposed to the elements. It is not exposed to water. It is not exposed to air, all right? So what that means is that over time, a lot of dust is going to collect inside this housing here, okay? Basically, this drum and the backside. All right, there's going to be a lot of brake dust inside. Okay, and so now would be more or less a good time to put on our dust mask. All right, when we take this out, we're going to unleash a lot of dust, and we're going to rinse it away right away. All right, for safety's sake. And one of the things I like to do before that though is I like to remember, okay, the position of the brake drum, you know, versus the hub. Okay, so I do that by just taking my marker and I just put a little mark right here. And there's a reason for that, right? Sometimes, you know, let's say we haven't had any issues with vibrations, or we've got a pretty smooth ride and we want to keep it that way. All right, sometimes if you take this drum out, you know, maybe it's warped, or maybe it's imperfect, and for some reason in this position you got a good ride. You don't want to lose that. All right, if you accidentally take this drum out, rotate it to the wrong position, when we reinstall, okay, maybe it'll be a little bit out of balance. Okay, so just for reference sake, I like to put a little mark, okay, on the drum. Okay, let's put the mark right here, okay, with my marker. Okay, and just make it obvious, but it's black so you can't really tell. All right, and then that is our reference point. Okay, so remember, we will always remember to put the drum back in just like so. All right, and like I said, now is a good time to put on our mask. Okay, so please put on your mask. A lot of dust is going to get unleashed. So let's do that right now. Okay, you may not be able to hear me that well, but hey, I'm protected. We're going to take the drum off, all right? Now, it may not come off that easily. It may or may not, depending on your situation. Now, what you'll do is you can take your screwdriver and kind of wedge it out just slightly and go all around. Okay, just wedge it out slightly and basically break it open, this little enclosed case here. Okay, but it's coming out okay, and if you disengaged the parking brake, it should come out without any issue. Okay, we can see it starting to pop out. All right, give it a little bit on all sides. All right, okay, and then you take the entire rear drum off. All right, here we go. Hello friends, take a look at this. This is the brake drum, and you notice that I was very careful taking it off, because if you take a look inside, it's completely coated with brake dust. Okay, brake dust, harmful brake dust, I don't know, could be, probably, but keep yourself safe. And we can see here that it definitely needs some cleaning. All right, so that is the inside of the drum. All right, let's take a look at the brake itself. All right, so we take a look here. Okay, we've got all the various parts here. Now, I'm not going to go over disassembly of the rear brake drum. I have done it in the past, and it's kind of annoying to do. All right, but basically the parts here that are important to us are this wheel cylinder, okay, and here are the shoes. Okay, remember when I said when you step on the brake, the wheel cylinder is going to put force on these two shoes, okay, and the shoe is basically going to come outward. All right, that one's going to come outward, this one's going to come outward, and basically that is going to step on the inside of this drum. Okay, so that's why you can see the drum has a lot of shiny metal wear on the inside of it. All right, that's all from being used. Okay, being used, and as it rotates around, the shoe will step on the drum and slow the car down. All right, so now that we've taken a good look at the drum, okay, and the rear drum brake system, we're going to give it a good rinse off with water first. Okay, we're just going to use water, and then we're going to go at it with some brake cleaner. $3.37 brake cleaner from Walmart. Okay, works great. All right, but just take a look here. This is the brake shoe. Okay, it's still got some meat on it. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but it's got reasonable, you know, thickness left over. All right, reasonable thickness left over, and the reason for that is, you know, you can even think of the rear brake as some kind of auxiliary brake. All right, I don't want to say that, but it is kind of basically an auxiliary brake, and it doesn't get worn out as fast. And that's one of the reasons why it doesn't, is because it needs to be adjusted regularly. All right, so it's not always biasing the brakes. All right, but you don't need to change it too often, not like the front brakes. But we can see that this is the big shoe. Okay, there's some spring mechanism here that keeps it in place. All right, and we're going to talk about how to adjust that right after we clean this up. All right, let's spray off this brake drum. Woo. Look at all that stuff come out. Pretty bad. Pretty gross, right? I used a little bit more water pressure than I should have. Turn it down a little bit when you rinse yours. Now let's rinse the brake system. All right, I changed the hose to a slightly less powerful spray. Okay, we didn't want to unleash all that brake dust like we did earlier. But here we go. You see all that brake dust just kind of being unleashed? A huge poof came out when I hit it with the water. Look at all this goodness here. Oh my goodness. Look at all that. The neighbors are not gonna like me. All right, let's take a look at the drum and the brake system now, and notice how significantly cleaner it is than it was before. All right, all the dust is gone, and yeah, we can basically work on the brakes right now. Okay, if you take a look here, I mean, look at it. Basically, I got all the caked on dust off of it. All right, and it's pretty shiny. All right, pretty shiny. Okay, so I would say that you can probably actually start working on it now. Okay, just with a water rinse. If you really want to, you can go at it with the brake cleaner. And the reason why I don't really go too crazy with the brake cleaner is because the parts here, right, when they were first assembled, okay, when I replaced the brake shoes and reassembled this entire thing, there's actually lube in certain areas. Okay, for example, the wheel cylinder area right here. You can choose to re-lube them after you clean them off. If you use brake cleaner, right, what will happen is that it will blast off all the grease, the lubricating grease as well. And we may not necessarily want to do that. We just want to do a little brake adjustment here. So you can choose to go at it with the brake cleaner or just use water. Okay, we're gonna gently go at it with our brake cleaner, especially on the shoe portion. Okay, we don't need to clean off, like I said, too much of the internals. Here the water did most of the job. But let's just give it some sprays here from a distance so we got less power. Just like so, okay? And on the shoe over here, try not to inhale this stuff either, all right? Because it's pretty caustic, okay? This is some caustic stuff. And we're also gonna do some on the brake drum. We can go at this one a little more liberally. It won't hurt. Just do the outside real quick. But mostly the key thing is the inside, right? And we can see here it's a lot cleaner now. I still managed to get some extra grease off of it, so that's good. Okay, so now that we've pretty much cleaned off the rear brake, and you can see here that it's pretty shiny now, right? It's pretty shiny, and we got all the critical areas. All right, drum, system, all right, and you can see it's spring loaded. Okay, so the key thing here is that it is spring loaded, okay, and the position that it is set when it is disengaged is set by this adjustment screw here. All right, so we're going to adjust this adjustment screw, and what that does is it puts like a pre-bias on where the position of these shoes should be relative to when you start hitting the brake. Okay, when you start hitting the brake with the foot pedal, right, that starting position is set by this adjustment screw. Okay, so let's take a look at the adjustment screw. If you look very carefully here, there is this little cog thing. Okay, you can see there's like a little cog here. All right, and basically that is the adjustment screw. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn it with our screwdriver. Okay, some of the things to pay attention to this here are, you see there's this little shim here, all right? And the shim basically is clicking against the little teeth on this little adjustment cogwheel right here, all right? And so the way we measure the adjustment on the rear brake is by clicks, basically. Okay, so when you move this adjustment wheel, okay, by one click, so to speak, that click will then get pressed against this shim here, and which will lock that position in place. So however many clicks we go on this adjustment wheel, which means when we turn it, it'll go click by click by click by click, that will start to put a additional offset on the brake drum, okay, to set its starting position. All right, so basically what happened is that the shoe wore out, right? So now you need additional force on the pedal, right? You need additional force on the hydraulics and the wheel system to get that pad to start touching the drum. All right, so as the shoe wears out, okay, over time, there creates a larger air gap between the shoe and the interior of that drum. All right, so we want to eliminate that air gap so we have a more immediate feel on the brakes. Okay, so we're going to eliminate that air gap by setting the offset, and that offset is set by this adjustment screw right here. So you can see that when I turn this wheel, this prong here, this pronged item here, actually separates the two brake shoes a little bit farther and a little bit farther as you turn this wheel. Okay, and like I said, that will eliminate the air gap between the shoe and the interior of the drum. Okay, so now the question is, I know I need to turn this adjustment wheel, okay, by a number of clicks, right? I said everything's measured by clicks. How many clicks, okay? How many clicks do I turn this little adjustment wheel to get it so that we are biased correctly? Okay, and in my experience, all right, after a lot of driving and not adjusting the rear brakes, in my experience, about 10 to 14 clicks on this is the appropriate amount. All right, so 10 to 14 clicks on this adjustment wheel to get it so that this is nice and firm against the interior of the drum. And then you don't have to worry about it for quite some time. Okay, so here is a better angle of that little adjustment screw. Okay, you can see here, sometimes they call it a star, sometimes they call it a gear, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's the set screw for the offset on the rear drums. All right, so if you take a look here, it's actually a very interesting gear, okay, because it's not two directional, it's not bi-directional. All right, so it's kind of sloped in one direction and then flat on the other direction. So really you can only turn it one direction. All right, yeah, they don't want you to be taking this set screw wheel and pushing upwards on it. Okay, they want you to be putting force downward on it only. Okay, it's only when you replace the shoe system, the shoes with brand new shoes, do you disassemble this entire thing and then you reset this this adjustment knob all the way back to the starting position. Okay, but over time, as the shoe wears out, you just go in one direction on this only, and then you let it click. All right, so I'm gonna do one, and then you can see what that looks like. All right, so let's just do one click and see if I can get it to click on video. All right, so I'm going to take my screwdriver and just very gently do a click so you can see what that looks like. Sorry, it's going out of focus, but wedge it on one of these teeth, okay, and then press away from you the screwdriver. Okay, and so it's not really clicking too hard, all right? It's not clicking too hard, but you can see we probably did 1 or 2 clicks right there. Okay, so just take your screwdriver again and keep doing this. Okay, 10 to 14 clicks. You can kind of visually keep track of it too. You don't necessarily have to hear this shim thing here click necessarily, but just click it, move it like this. Okay, that's another one, right? And that's another one. So that's about 4 or 5 already. All right, and this shim should be pressing against the new setting on the teeth. Okay, so we're gonna do this about 10 times. Okay, we already did about 4 or 5 right there. Okay, and then I'm gonna show you another way to test if you did this enough. What you're gonna do is we're going to put the drum back on and spin this hub around. Okay, we're gonna spin the hub around, see if it actually has increased the friction between the shoe and the drum. Here's a slightly better angle of what I'm doing here. If you look here, see, I'm just taking my screwdriver, giving it one little bit of rotation here, and that's what we call a click. Okay, and like I said, you can see this metal shim here. Sometimes it's working well, sometimes it's not. All right, but this metal shim here, if you take a really close look here, it is being pressed against one of the positions on the adjustment wheel. Okay, so yeah, that should supposed to lock it in place. All right, maybe it's not working so well here, but that's okay. All right, so once you've gone about 10 clicks, okay, you might want to check out if it's working or not. So what we'll do is we'll put the drum back on. All right, and remember we had the marker mark, so we can put it back exactly as it was before. Okay, so we'll put the drum back on. Okay, align the marker mark. And if you tighten it enough, you will start to notice that it's even hard to put the drum back on. Okay, so one word of advice is do not overdo the clicking. Okay, remember that little set screw, it's virtually a one-way screw. Okay, it's a one-way adjustment, so it's not too easy to back it off. All right, so only go 10 and then go 1 click at a time after that. And in between, what you can do is you can test out to see if the bias is okay now. All right, so I'm already feeling that it's a little bit tighter to put on, but let's see, we'll spin it around. All right, try to spin it around by hand. Okay, and you can kind of hear the drag on it, okay? You can kind of hear the drag on it, and maybe it's just starting to drag, okay? And maybe it's not dragging at all, okay? Or maybe it's dragging a lot. All right, what we want it to be is where it starts to drag somewhat, okay? So this is still a little bit loose, so I'm gonna put about 4 more clicks on it and then redo this process and test again. Okay, putting about 4 more clicks on this. That's about 1 right there. 2, okay. 3, okay. And 4, okay, that's about 4 clicks right there. Even though, like I said, it doesn't click, but that's a position of 1 tooth. Okay, now we can go back and try the drum again. All right, remember to align the mark with the mark so that the 5 lug bolts align properly. And now it should be a lot harder to put the drum back on. Okay, I did 4 additional clicks and you can feel it already when you put the drum back on. Okay, try to spin it. And there's more drag, right? You see? More drag. So I would say this is pretty good, all right? This is about good to go. Give it some force, it's not spinning too freely. And I think the adjustment on the rear brake bias is set, all right? Now we're just gonna put the rear wheel back on and let the car down, and we'll be done. Now when you retighten these lug nuts, you know, tighten it as much as possible until the point the wheel starts turning. And then you can use one of 2 tricks. One, which is the one where I lower the car just a little bit, where the tire touches the ground. And then I can use that as traction so I can tighten the lug nuts. Or you can just pull on the handbrake. It might not be tight enough yet. It could be tight enough, but it's probably better to do the tire trick. Either way, it should work. Let the car down a little bit. Okay, now the tire is touching the ground and we can tighten these lug nuts properly. You can use a torque wrench, you can use an impact wrench. You can just tighten it down, and then after after about 50 miles of driving, tighten it down again by hand. Either one of these methods works. It's your choice. Letting the car down. And that's it. We're done adjusting the rear drum brake. Now all we need to do is the other side. Now we just finished doing the other side and we're ready to go. Now as soon as you're done adjusting the rear brakes, you will immediately feel the difference on your e-brake. Looking at that e-brake again, remember we had to pull really hard to get it to engage. Now look, it's pretty tight, okay? One click, that's all you need. One click to get it engaged. Okay, so the bias is set properly on the rear brakes. Okay, we're not trying to manhandle this and pull this all the way up, all right? It should only be like 1 to 2 clicks, okay? And you'll see over time it becomes 2, then 3, then 4 clicks. Okay, just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Kelvin's Garage. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I can continue producing these awesome videos just for you guys. Thanks again.